Okay, continuing on with the encounter with Dolphus Raymond here, we didn't quite get all of it in that last video. So notice that he's living like a double life. He's pretending. There's no conflict. So because of that, there's no change. He gets to be comfortable, but he's hiding and lying. Now Scout says, I had a feeling that I shouldn't be here listening to this sinful man who had mixed children, didn't care who knew it, but he was fascinating. I had never encountered a being who deliberately perpetrated fraud against himself. But why had he entrusted us with his deepest secret? I asked him why. Because you're children, and you can understand it, he said. And because I heard that one, he jerked his head at Dill, things haven't caught up with that one's instinct yet. Let him get a little older and he won't get sick and cry. Maybe things will strike him as being not quite right, say, but he won't cry, not when he gets a few years on him. Cry about what, Mr. Raymond? Dill's maleness was beginning to assert itself. Cry about the simple hell people give other people without even thinking. Cry about the hell white people give colored folks without even stopping to think that they're people too. Atticus says, cheating a colored man is 10 times worse than cheating a white man, I muttered. Says it's the worst thing you can do. Mr. Raymond said, I don't reckon it's Miss Jean Louise. You don't know your pa's not a run-of-the-mill man. It'll take a few years for that to sink in. You haven't seen enough of the world yet. You haven't even seen this town, but all you gotta do is step back inside the courthouse. Which reminded me that we were missing nearly all of Mr. Gilmore's cross-examination. I looked at the sun, and it was dropping fast behind the store tops on the west side of that square. Between two fires, I could not decide which I wanted to jump into, Mr. Raymond or the 5th Judicial Circuit Court. Come on, Dill, I said. You all right now? Yeah, glad to have met you, Mr. Raymond, and thanks for the drink. It was mighty settling. All right, so why am I focusing on this scene? Well, this is an alternative method of dealing with racism. Okay, it's non-confrontational, and it involves deception, right? There's lying going on and faking and pretending. So he's leading a double life. But he says, well, this is the easiest way to do things to avoid conflict. You don't want to mess with people. They can't understand you. They can't deal with, opposing opinions. Well, just avoid it. Don't get into all that. Okay? Where have we seen this idea of pretending before? Remember, this encounter, okay, this is a formative key lesson from an adult for Dill. And Dill was, crying, but he's like, don't worry, he's going to grow up. He's not going to get sick and cry. Why did Dolphus Raymond trust him? He says, because you're children and you can understand it. Okay? So the child's perspective is what he trusts when it comes to secrets. Why? Because they're innocent. They haven't developed all the racist attitudes because racism is learned. It's cultural. It's learned. It's formed by being taught by the taboos and the prejudices and the family circuit and the environment. Okay? So we say, nature versus nurture. And in the case of racism, it's nurture. Okay? It's taught. It's nurtured. You're not born racist. Nobody's born racist. You can watch, videos of children from different backgrounds playing all together, little babies. Nobody's being racist, okay? But the focus is on Dill, and we already had a connection with Dill with this whole problem of pretending and avoiding reality, okay? It's pragmatic, but it's avoiding truth and reality. Okay, and so it's one way of coping with problems and injustice. And Dill already had this tendency as one who was pretending and running away from his family problems and literally ran away. And so it's not by accident that Dill is the one being focused on here. It was Dill who felt sick and ran out of the courthouse. All right. So remember this encounter with Dolphus Raymond. Dill and Dolphus Raymond are connected because of this. Okay. And notice he says the drink of the Coke was mightily setting to his stomach, and the Coke represented the pretending and the double reality symbol because it was the bottle, right, with the brown paper bag around it. Well, I guess that's more red, but you get the idea, right? So it settled him how? His stomach physically, but also his mind, his crying. Mr. Raymond was trying to give him advice. So keep that in mind, because that's going to come back later with Dill. Now we have Atticus's plea here as they go back into court. He's going to make his final plea to the jury for justice. And his final plea for justice is based on equality before the law. He believes the law makes all people equal. But there is one way in this country in which all men are created equal. There is one human institution that makes a pauper the equal of a Rockefeller, the stupid man the equal of an Einstein, and the ignorant man the equal of any college president. That institution, gentlemen, is a court. It can be the Supreme Court of the United States or the humblest JP court in the land, or this honorable court which you serve. Our courts have their faults, as does any human institution, but in this country our courts are the great levelers. And in our courts, all men are created equal. Okay? So Atticus's plea is for equality, that all men are equal before the law. But as we're going to see, and as we, already know, basically, it's not going to work. Okay? So, I'm going to skip down now. The kids come. The kids have to leave the court because Calpurnia comes and takes them. Nevertheless, finally the jury, which took a long while to make the decision, okay? Actually, they stay there. I'm sorry. Dill falls asleep, and they're saying it's taken a long time. I asked him, "Sure is, Scout," Jem says happily. "Well, from the way you put it, it'd just take 5 minutes." Jem raised his eyebrows. "There are things you don't understand," he said, and I was too weary to argue. So the fact that it's taken a long time, okay, is hopeful, because if the jury was just going to immediately give a racist verdict, they would have done it in 5 minutes, okay? There's a real battle going on. The evidence is so strong, and Atticus is such a good lawyer, that there's almost hope that the jury will do the right thing and not actually, just make a racist verdict. But unfortunately, everything comes back guilty. Okay? So Atticus loses, and Atticus is hoping for an appeal. Atticus whispers something to Tom Robinson. Okay? Puts his hand on his shoulder. So Atticus is trying to give Tom hope with an appeal. And appeal means when you lose a case, you get another try. Okay? So second chance to have the case evidence seen again. But, yeah, it's not going to look very easy for him. And notice Atticus was like Miss Dubose. He knew this was going to happen, and he began anyway, knowing almost 100% likely to fail. And obviously, Tom was called guilty. In chapter 22, I'm not going to focus on a whole lot here, but I do want to show Jem's reaction and Dill's reaction. Dill's coping strategy with the guilty verdict, because they know they're old enough, and that's why Jem sees the most. Dill got really angry and upset, and Scout kind of doesn't really get everything that's going on. She's too young. Okay, her moment's coming up later. So this is Jem speaking here. He says, "It's all right to talk like that. Can't any Christian judges and lawyers make up for heathen juries? Soon as I get grown." So what's Jem's solution? Well, he's going to become a judge to fix racism. So his solution is going to grow up and become a judge. "That's something you'll have to take up with your father," Miss Maudie said. We went down Miss Maudie's cool new steps into the sunshine, found Mr. Avery and Miss Stephanie Crawford still at it. They had moved down the sidewalk and were standing in front of Miss Stephanie's house. Miss Rachel was walking toward them. "I think I'll be a clown when I get grown," said Dill. Jem and I stopped in our tracks. "Yes, sir, a clown," he said. "There ain't one thing in this world I can do about folks except laugh, so I'm going to join the circus and laugh my head off." "You got it backwards, Dill," said Jem. "Clowns are sad. It's folks that laugh at them." "Well, I'm going to be a new kind of clown. I'm going to stand in the middle of the ring and laugh at the folks. Just look yonder," he pointed. "Every one of them ought to be riding broomsticks. Aunt Rachel already does." All right. So Dill's reaction is to run away from reality. Okay, to mock and to laugh and to use comedy and pretend, right? To dress up like a clown, to avoid reality. It is the classic Dill method escapism, right? Pretend. Just like who? Well, Dolphus Raymond. So that's Dill's way of coping with the injustice of the verdict.